Okay, everybody. I'm going to give us a little demo on how to use the Rangeland Carrying Capacity app that I built and walk through a few kind of ways to use the app and things going on. So right now I just opened the app. You'll see here it was loading. That just means it's getting everything on the back end set up, accessing all of the different data sets and all of that. And so there's a couple of ways you'll kind of see in the steps here. There's a couple of ways to use the app. First, I can come over into this draw tab right here and draw a polygon. So for both examples, I'm going to use the Maxwell Ranch up here off 287. I'm going to find it. Okay. And there's no search feature, so you'll have to kind of just find it. And then let's say, okay, I got close enough, but I want to look at satellite imagery to really get to know what my pastures are. And we can come and do that. Let's switch back to topo since I'm a little lost here. Oh, there she is. So here's Red Mountain. I know that this is a pasture that I want to draw and figure out how many people I can, or how many animals I can put into that pasture. So there's the boundaries. That's my fence line. We'll see up in the corner, it's working again. And so now I've drawn my pasture, I can come over here into my carrying capacity map and take a look. It'll tell me that's the pasture I drew. And it's 46 acres. And then I can come over here and start playing with this sidebar here on the left. And what we do there is we get to choose which data set we want to use. So we want our data to come from satellite remote sensing data from rangelands.app or web soil survey. And you can explore kind of what the differences in those data sets are on your own, but there are differences and I wanted to point those out. So I'm going to keep with rangelands.app for now. And I'm interested in the use days. I want to keep with a 25% consumption rate. So that's the animals are using 25% of the total forage production for consumption. Another 25% might get eaten or trampled or pooped on or something like that. I'm going to adjust my percent edible. 100% of that pasture is edible, but say some of it was really steep or what have you, I would want to change that back down to 80. And you can always click on these question boxes and see a little more information. So I'm going to want to choose right now. I'm running 1,200 pound cow calves in that pasture, and I've got 100 of them. How many days could I put in there? Well, about 4 under average conditions, and under low, maybe just 3. We'll see if it's 10 animals, it'll update the map and give me kind of differences between those high and low estimates. Low, average, and high are used here in the rangelands.app data because that's how the NRCS and web soil survey classify vegetation conditions. So these low conditions are going to be when it's kind of in the last 40 years, that bottom 10% of those years, the lowest couple of years, and then the top 10%, so the highest years, and then average, of course, is going to be the mean. And so that's kind of basically how to use it. I could come back and do web soil survey. That's going to reload the data set, and so we'll see that load bar up in the right hand corner again, and it's going to give me a slightly different estimate, right? It says 47 days under our conditions, where rangelands.app gave us 52. So the true value somewhere in there probably. Again, this is just a starting place. And so say I went out there and I clipped and weighed my pasture, and I know exactly actually the forage production in that pasture. Well, I can come into the edit tab and actually say, I know I had a really low year, and I think on a low year, it's going to be more like 900. On an average year, it's going to be more like 1,400. And maybe on a good year, we'll go with 1,900. Now, importantly, you can edit those cells, but then you'll want to press save. And just want to point out this note here that those headings are just rangeland productivity low, representative or average, and high. So so now I have kind of all of that edited, and then when I come back here, you'll remember it was 47 days, but now that I upped it, it's up to 57. Lastly, with this drawn pasture, I can come in and take a look, and now this will take a minute. And so while this is loading Precip, I'll just give you a rundown of how the app works. So the app is taking data from multiple different sources and bringing it all together kind of in the back end, in the sphere of the internet, and bringing it to this front end app, right? And the data sources it uses, like on the left, the Rangelandsat app, or RAP data as it's called, web soil survey data, that's going to be the Surgo data set. And then for Precip, we're going to use GridMet data. And that data gives us a spatially representative estimate of the precipitation and temperature of a certain parcel that we draw. It's not going to be 100% accurate. It takes weather station data and extrapolates that to make a grid of the whole country of what precipitation is like. So it's not 100%, but it gives us a really good estimate of what we're looking at so far in the year and what the averages look like. So you'll see these are going to be the annual values compared to kind of the 40-year average across each month of the year. Again, averages aren't the best tool all the time, but they give us kind of an understanding of which forage production level to use, etc. The next thing that this app can do is go in and look at a 40-year drought history using what's known as the Palmer Severity Drought Index. And so this is going to load in, and it'll only start loading once you click on those tabs, but this is going to load in drought data. And the reason this is important, it's not going to necessarily indicate which of those features on the left you choose, but just so you understand kind of the parcel that you drew or you upload, which we'll do in a second here, it'll give you kind of the history and of that parcel and let you know what the drought cycle in your area looks like. Because ranches on rangelands, they all have kind of drought cycles, and some, like in the Southwest, will cycle a lot more severely, where you get into really severe droughts and really wet years, and some are a little bit more moderated. And so it'll just let you know kind of what that looks like over the last 40 years and interact with it. While that's loading, again, it does take about a minute, so I apologize about that. I'm going to come back here and it'll still keep loading, and I'm actually going to click on this Google tab. Okay, and what that's going to do is bring me over to Google to let me go into Google My Maps, which is where I'm going to build a pasture map. So I'm going to click on Get Started. I'll have to make a Google account, and then I'm going to click Create a New Map. All right, so I've got that map started, but I'm going to come back over here into our range carrying capacity app because I think our drought tab is loaded, which it is, and we'll see here our drought history, and we can hover over that to see what that index value was in each of those years. And then we've got kind of a little bit of insight into what that means, those values mean in our legend. So that just tells us a little bit about the drought history. We can see what's going on with this drawn pasture. Okay, so back over to My Maps here with Google. It's similar. I'm not going to walk through Google Earth Pro for the desktop, but you can draw pastures similarly there. So I'm going to zoom in on Google Maps here to a place I know. We're going to go back to the Maxwell Ranch. Now, the benefit of coming here to draw your pastures versus on the app itself, right? You'll remember I can actually only draw one pasture at a time. So if I want to draw another pasture, say right here, and load that, what we'll see reflected in the carrying capacity map when that finishes is just that new drawn pasture. It's not going to have both of them in there. But what we can do through Google Maps is actually put in a true set of pastures where we have multiple different pastures. So I'm going to get this. We're going to go back to a similar area. There's Red Mountain. We're on Google Maps. Okay, so this is that same pasture. And I'm actually going to come up here to draw a line, add line or shape, and I'm going to start drawing this meadow pasture, right? And this is going to be really where your local knowledge will come in, because you'll know that that fence comes across the road, and you can get as detailed as you want. And you can kind of see in the satellite base map option where the fence line is. So I'm going to name this meadow pasture. That's important. You don't have to. It'll automatically name it polygon, but I know this is the meadow. But like I said, I don't just want one pasture. I want to know kind of what my whole ranch is. So I'm going to come back up, and I know on the other side of this road, say we have the hill, and this isn't accurate, but I can come up here and I know I've got this nice big pasture that comes and runs along the road around the house, and I connect it back to that initial dot. I'm going to call this one the hill pasture. Last one, just for good measure, so we can have 3, is we'll come along the main road here and build one that cuts across. Okay, so now I'm starting to build out my pasture map. I can access this at any time and edit it. So this is a good tool for any rancher to just use. Now, importantly, and I can come in and title and say this is the Maxwell Ranch. And so you're going to come up here when you have this built and you have your layer, and we'll actually title this pasture map, or whatever you want it to be, just something you can find. And so we're going to come up to these 3 dots here, right on the right side of that white box, and we're going to scroll down to export to KML, KMZ. And a couple of options here. I think the best option is you can do the entire map. You can also do just one pasture or one layer. And I always choose the layer in case I have other things like watering points or something in my map. It won't work if there's any markers. You'll want it to just be polygons, and then you'll export that as a KML and press download. Make sure you click this export as KML instead of KMZ. That'll be important. So we'll download that. We'll see it down there in our downloads. And then when I go back to the app, I'm going to press browse in the upper left-hand corner, downloads. Got to scroll down all the way to pasturemap.kml, right? So that's our pasture map. We'll upload that into the app. And I forgot. So importantly, this is a good note. I'm going to have to reload the app because it will look first to the KML upload folder, and if or look first to the drawn pasture, and if something is drawn, it won't look at that KML file. So we'll just press refresh on the app if you've already drawn a pasture. We'll come back down to in our downloads to upload our pasture map KML file. We'll see that spinner is working up in the right-hand corner. All good things. And then we come to our carrying capacity map. Boom. We have our 3 pastures there. And now I can kind of go through the same thing, change the consumption rate, and mess around there, change with, the animals. Maybe I want to see how many elk I can support, duration, etc. So that's a quick rundown on how to use the app. You can come back over and find precip and drought it'll combine all of these areas for those measures. So that's an important note, but that's a quick rundown on how to use the app. and reach out to me, which you can find kind of my website there at on the app, or to Retta with CSU Extension for more information or for questions or comments on the app. Thanks so much.